Hi there and good morning. Welcome to the City of Newport Beach Small Business Relief Grant Program webinar. Today we have a special guest, Councilmember Diane Dixon, who's going to welcome everybody to this webinar.
Well, thank you, Mike. Good morning, all. And I understand there are quite a few, over 100 people participating of Newport businesses. That's fantastic. I'm Diane Dixon, and I'm council member Newport Beach and a former mayor. And I'm just so delighted on behalf of my council colleagues to introduce the Small Business Relief Grant Program that you're seeking information about. It's so important to all of us on the City Council that our small businesses get back on track, fast track their opening and operations after COVID and getting through this difficult economic time. And we're delighted that we've partnered with the Small Business Development Center in Orange County. So this is an outsourced service that will provide objectivity and process that is really essential to make sure that these loans get grant applications get approved, reviewed, approved, and funds dispensed as expeditiously as possible. Let me just give you a little bit of information. The background is that the city received $2.1 million in federal coronavirus relief funding available through the CARES Act. That's the federal act. And that was dispersed to the County of Orange. So the Board of Supervisors acted to make it available to cities. And our supervisor, Michelle Steele, made that possible that we as a city council then could receive the funds and then direct them into the program to help our small businesses that have been impacted by COVID in this health emergency. And so the city developed with Tara Finnegan is on the call today, and she's really helped us understand how we organize this program, develop this program to provide grants up to $10,000 to Newport Beach small businesses that have been financially impacted by COVID-19 to help your business reopen faster and recover faster. And we found a great partner with the Small Business Development Center, and Mike, Hannah, and their team are helping the city run this program and are eager to help you. And over the coming days and weeks, they are available to walk you through the program from the application to the gathering of documents, and will also offer free consulting and training. They do this all the time. This is the Small Business Development Center is not a startup. How long have you been in existence, Mike?
Almost 40 years.
So you know what you're doing. That's why we are.
I don't know if I always do, but yeah.
We and all of our business companies that are on the call today are going to be in good hands. So it's for every business, whether or not you receive a grant, that have consulting as well. So please be aware of this great free resource. And so now I will turn it back to Mike, Mike Daniel, who will explain the program and answer your questions. And just again, let me say thank you. And let's get these applications in, and so we can get them reviewed and the grant money dispersed and get our businesses back on track fast.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much, Council Member.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thank you. So today we're going to go through the program. We do have a Q&A chat box. So if you have any questions as we're going through this, please write your question. We'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. We've even made some changes from Tuesday when we did this originally. So there's going to be some slight changes to kind of listening to what some of your questions were. So hopefully we'll be able to answer them a bit better as we go through this, some of those nuanced questions. So let's get started. So the Small Business Grant Relief Program itself, it's one-time funding, as you heard from the council member, allocated to small businesses located within the city of Newport Beach. And first we want to, it's really meant to aid those businesses that have had a temporary loss of revenue from COVID-19. So the application process opens tomorrow at 12 o'clock. I'm sorry, June 12th at 8 a.m. and is open through Tuesday, June 16th at 5:30 p.m. So just so that you're aware, and we'll state this many times today, this is not a first come, first served process. And so you do not have to be the first one in to receive the funding. You can take your time, fill it out correctly, fill out the application. If you want to do it over the weekend, whatever works for you. It's open tomorrow at 8 a.m. and closes on Tuesday, June 16th at 5:30 p.m. And so we'll talk about that process, but it is not a first come, first serve. So don't feel that you have to get up at 6 a.m. tomorrow to wait till 8 o'clock hits and submit this. You do not have to do that. So with that, grants will be allocated up to $10,000 based on the number of employees that you have in your business. So for businesses that have 5 or less employees, you can receive up to $5,000. For businesses that have between 6 and 10 employees, you can receive up to $7,500. And for businesses that have between 11 and 30 employees, you can receive up to $10,000. Okay, so first starting point is the dollar amount. The funding priorities. So your business has to be located in the city's commercial and industrial areas or zones, provide services on site, and you have been severely impacted by COVID-19. And we'll talk about what that means in just a second. Your funding priorities. So the funding priorities for the city are to first help retail, restaurants, and personal service establishments, specifically hair salons, barbershops, salons, day spas, gyms, and health clubs. So precedence will be given to those businesses that fit into those 3 industries and categories. They will be the first ones served and serviced, and then we'll move on from there. So that's the first start. And then the second part of this is the city really wants to focus on businesses that have not received any federal funding yet. And that's really based on the CARES Act requirements, that if you haven't received any EIDL or economic injury disaster loan funding or paycheck protection program funding yet, they really want to focus on those businesses first that first fit into the categories of restaurant, retail, and service, and then moving on to businesses that received EIDL or PPP would be secondary after that. So, starting with restaurant, retail, and professional service, I'll quickly go back. These are their precedents of order, and then businesses that haven't received any funding yet, they want to focus on those first, and then followed by businesses that have received different tranches of funding based on need. So to be eligible, the first thing is your business has to have been affected by COVID, okay? So to prove that your business has been affected by COVID, there are a couple of different ways. First way would be that your business was deemed non-essential and you were forced to be shut down by the state or local government. And I'm gonna assume that that's probably most businesses on this call. Your business was forced to be shut down. For those that were still open and operating and you weren't forced to be shut down, you need to showcase and highlight that your business has had a downturn in sales by more than 25%. So a couple of different ways to do that. You could do it year over year. So you could do, March, April, May of this year versus last year, or you could do over the last 6 months. So January, February, March, and then April, May, June. I mean, a couple of different ways to do that. So, we'll work with you on what that looks like. And we'll come back to this question in just a second. Or your business had to lay off at least one of its employees, full or part-time, or multiple, or one or more of your employees have contracted COVID-19 while at work. Those are the different things to qualify for this loan. And that's how you show that you've been affected by COVID-19 to get into this grant program, okay? So that's the first part. And then the terms and conditions. So what type of business can you be or not be? So you have to be a for-profit business and located within Newport Beach city limits. You have to be legal and located in a commercial industrial space. You have to be independently owned and operated with the principal office located within Newport Beach city limits. And the officers of the business must reside in Orange County. And that's really kind of a qualifier built around the CARES Act, but that came from the county, that the business owners that own more than 20% of the business have to also reside in the county of Orange as well. You have to have an active business license for a minimum of 6 months, have 30 or less full-time or full-time equivalent combination of full-time and part-time employees. So 30 full-time, if you had all part-time employees, it could be up to 60, or it could be a combination of those. So maybe it's 5 full-time and then the other 25 are all part-time, so that would be 50, so that could be 55. It just kind of depends on the scenario that you have within your business. So maybe for restaurants, it's really going to fall with a lot more part-time with some full-time, but it's for every one full-time person, it equates to 2 part-time. So that's how this combination works. And then you have to have average annual gross receipts of $15 million or less over the previous 3 years. Okay, so those are the kind of the terms and conditions. A few additional ones is that you must be current on your business license fees and in good standing. You must be current on business improvement district assessments and that you're paying them, and must have a valid marine activities permit if that fits your business structure and that's something that you would need, and not have any existing municipal code violation. And then just a few more. Disclose whether the business has received capital from the Paycheck Protection Program or an economic injury disaster loan. And that will be right on the application. Follow the state's reopening guidance for your industry, and then submit an application and all required supporting documentation, which we'll go through what that supporting documentation looks like as well in just a moment. But the application itself is really straightforward. It'll go live tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And it should take you somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes to fill it out. It's not comprehensive by any means. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that. So once you receive this funding, what can you spend it on? So you can spend it on working capital to cover your day-to-day operating expenses, such as rent or lease payments. If you happen to own your commercial space, it could be the mortgage payment, utility payments, payroll, inventory, technology, marketing, communications, PPE for either your staff or your customers, and then devices intended to, to make sure that people stay healthy. So I know a lot of people put in sanitation supplies or plexiglass or different things to make sure that your customers and your staff feel safe while coming to work and following the COVID-19 guidelines set by the county and the state. So any one of these activities would be eligible and that you could spend money on. Okay. And so use of funds. So you must sign and verify that the use of funds will be spent on the business expenses. That's straight out of the CARES Act funding requirements. Provide documentation verifying that the grant funds were used toward credible business expenses. And so we're going to ask you for the receipts of how you spent the money, and that business expenses that have already been reimbursed through the federal government are now eligible for the Small Business Relief Grant Program. So just for example, if you got Paycheck Protection Program funding, and let's say that you paid your rent for the month of June, you can't get this money and pay it for the month of June as well. You can use it for the month of July, you just can't use it for the same thing. We want to make sure that they're going to different expenses. Okay. And so when can you apply? So this opens tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and it closes on Tuesday, June 16th at 5:30. And unfortunately, late applications will not be accepted. But as I stated, this is not a first come, first serve. So you have the ability to take your time, fill it out. There's going to be a couple different ways to do that. And so we'll go through that in just a second. And then what's going to happen is, based on the different priorities that the city has laid out, there will be a randomized computer drawing if we get to enough applications, which I'm sure we will, where everyone will be put into a lottery that are eligible businesses in those different categories and buckets. And it will be a randomized computer drawing that will be live on Friday, June 19th at 4 p.m. that you can tune in and watch. And you will be notified if you're eligible and you fit into one of the precedented criteria that the city has laid out. So there will be a live lottery for you to watch so that you can see this all take place and it's completely transparent as to how it works. And then I'll turn it over to Manal Richa, who's our director for our SBDC, that's going to go through the second half of this, and then we'll start answering questions.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. So bear in mind that, I know we are sharing a lot of information with you today. We're going to give you the website link where you can, download the guidelines and take your time going through all of this information. The second piece of the webinar is going to focus on what happens if and when you are selected as part of the live lottery that Mike mentioned, which will be happening on Friday, June 19th. Once that happens and you are selected, a representative from our Orange County Small Business Development Center will be reaching out to you to discuss, go over, and collect all required documentations. You don't need to submit the documentations that Mike mentioned, and I'm going to be covering in the next few slides as part of this initial application process. All you need is to just complete the application between June 12th and June 16th, and then if and when selected, we will be coming back and getting in touch with you so we can collect the additional required documentation. Once you complete your file as a selected awardee with all the initial documentations, with the work of the SBDC representative, the city will release 50% of the payment to you as a recipient. But part of the process is you need to agree to a city inspection that's intended to verify that the money that you are receiving through this grant is going to be used in accordance with the program guidelines and requirements. Next, please. So as a grant recipient, you have 45 days to produce documentation. The documentation will include receipts that you have used the grant money to be able to fund the eligible expenses as covered by Mike a few minutes ago. Once the documentation is received, then the city will release the remaining 50% of the grant to the recipient. Grant recipients might need to provide additional documentation, and the SBDC representative will walk you through that process as well. Next, please. All right, so as a grant recipient, you need to produce documentation at the time of the award that shows that 100% of the grant amount was incurred on eligible expenses dated March 1st or later. The city will release up to 100% of the grant amount. Mike, do you want to speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So a couple ways, you can. So let's assume that you get a $10,000 grant from the city. So if you want to spend it forward facing, once you get the money, you're going to spend it. You're going to get half up front. So you're going to get $5,000. Then you're going to show us that you spent that $5,000 on something. Let's just say it's rent. You come back and show us the receipt that you spent it on rent, and then the second half of the funds will be dispersed to you. Now, if you wanted to go with option B, it could be where, let's assume that you got the $10,000, and prior to getting that initial $10,000, you show us a receipt that you paid your rent for the month of June. You can go back as far as March 1st, but from March 1st through today, you spent the $10,000 on other things. You can show us the receipts now, and then you'll get 100%. So two different ways to do that. It's whatever you're comfortable with. There's no right or wrong answer to how you do that. And I'm going to assume for many businesses, maybe you did pay your rent for 3 or 4 months, and I'm not just picking on rent. You could be for payroll, it could be for other things, it could be for PPE that you already bought. So different ways to do that. If you want to get all the money up front and just want to show us the expenses now, as long as they're dated March 1st or to current, you can do it that way too. So whatever works for you.
All right, so 2 options in terms of being awarded the funds. Now, the next few slides, we're going to talk about documentations and options for documentations for you to provide as part of verifying that you are in need for this grant and also completing your file. In order to prove that you were affected by COVID-19, Mike covered multiple ways to do that. One has to do by showing that you did experience a decline in sales of more than 25% compared to the previous 3 months or a comparable 3 months period. And in order for you, if you decide to choose that option to validate and to prove that you were affected by COVID-19, we would be looking to collect one of the following options. Either monthly financial records, including your profit and loss statements, along with the balance sheets for the 3 months ended May 2020, meaning for March, April, and May, and the prior 3 months ended February 2020 that include December 2019, January, and February 2020. So that would be one option if you decide to prove that you were affected by COVID-19 and your sales declined. Or the other option, you can provide us copies of your monthly financial records for the 3 months ended May 2020. That includes March, April, and May. And for the 3 months ended May 2019, which is the comparable 3 months period that include March, April, and May of 2019. So this is one way how you can prove through documentation that your business was affected by COVID-19, and you might choose to go that route. The next slide. On this slide, we are showing you 2 other options that you can choose one option if you decided not to go the route of showing that your sales have decreased and you want to show that you had to lay off at least 1 employee as a result to COVID-19. You can choose the first bullet point that is on that list. And what we would need to do is have received from you copies of your 2019 Forms 940 and 2020 year-to-date Forms 941. So these are the documentation that you could submit as part of the follow-up process when you are selected to showcase that your business was affected by COVID-19 and you had to lay off at least 1 employee. Now, you can also choose to prove that you were affected by COVID-19 and that by showing that your business was considered non-essential by the federal or state government and was forced to shut down. And this process happens through self-certification through the application. Now, in addition to choosing one of the options on documentations, that I just covered, proving that you were affected by COVID-19, we would be required that you submit the following documents. Proof of an active Newport Beach business license for a minimum of 6 months prior to June 1st, 2020. That means you should have had a business license as of at least by December 2019. a copy of your 2019 business tax returns, or if you have not filed for your tax returns for 2019, then you would submit a copy of your 2018 filings. We would be looking to collect the 2 most recent business bank statements and copy of pages of lease or grantee demonstrating proof of commercial or industrial business address. You as an applicant need to hold the master lease to this space. So if you are subleasing, unfortunately, that will not be the case. You need to be the master lease holder to that space. Thank you. So you do have 3 ways to apply, and you don't have, again, to rush to go to the website right now. The application is not going to be available before tomorrow, Friday, June 12th at 8 a.m. You can choose to apply online. You can go to the city's website as shown on this slide, and in a few minutes I will also share that with you in the Dropbox so you have access to it. And also on that website page, you can find all the deadlines, all the contact information, and everything we're talking about today. You can also choose to download a PDF copy of your application, which will be available on the city's website, as a PDF file. You can download it, you can fill it out and email it to economic-development@newportbeachca.gov. Or if you prefer to submit it in person, then you can stop by the City Hall at the address shown on the screen, and you can turn in that application in person. So if you have questions leading to tomorrow, or if you have questions as the application period is open and you are working on filling out the application, you feel free to reach out to the City of Newport Beach City Manager's Office. The phone number is 949-644-3001, or you can send an email with your questions. But also remember that the SBDC team is here to address your questions as well. And we do have the contact information on the screen. You can send an email or call us, and we are more than happy to walk you through any questions you have. So in summary, what the information we just covered is for the City of Newport Beach Small Business Emergency Grant Program. It's a grant program that could qualify you for up to $10,000 in funds, depending on the bracket and where you fall in terms of number of employees. Precedence through this program will be given to retail, restaurants, and personal service establishments. And as Mike mentioned, there will be priority selection depending on whether or not you received disaster relief funds through EIDL or PPP. You must have been affected as a business by COVID-19. And we talked about the different ways that you can choose only one way to prove how you were affected, either by the decrease of sales, or you had to lay off an employee, at least one employee, or that your business was deemed to be non-essential and you had to be shut down by the government. The application will open between Friday, June 12th at 8 a.m. and Tuesday, June 16 at 5:30 p.m. Please remember, no late applications will be accepted. So although this is not first come, first serve, and we want you to take your time completing the online application or the PDF application, make sure that you meet the deadline of the submission. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We are expecting, along with the city, that this program is going to be oversubscribed. So we're going to be holding a lottery on Friday, June 19, and everyone will be notified of that date. Selected grantees will be notified in writing and will be contacted by an SBDC representative in order to help them through the collection of all the documentations we need to complete your file. And all information we discussed today will be is already on the city's website, which I'll be sending shortly in the chat box. Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Yeah. So thank you. So we'll start answering some of these questions, and I tried to answer some of them as we were going. So if that didn't fully answer your question, you can definitely give us a call, or call the city. We're here to help you through this, and I know that there's a lot of pieces and moving parts to this, and so let's try to answer some of these different pieces right now, just so that maybe as we're going through, maybe we'll answer questions for others. But first question is, what if we don't have any employees? Do we still qualify? And you do still qualify. Again, are you in a commercial corridor or an industrial zone? And do you have a lease, right? And so what we're looking for, and I know some of the questions that came out were, what's the difference between somebody having a lease for the whole space versus somebody subletting a smaller portion of that space? The city and really the CARES Act requirements require that it goes to the person that has the lease for the entire space, not a subletter of a smaller portion of that space. So, you know, unfortunately, to give you kind of the best case scenario, or not the best case, the scenario here, a hair salon that, you know, the person that owns the salon that has a lease for all of Suite A, you know, she holds the lease, she would qualify. Somebody that is leasing a chair or somebody that's leasing a small office within a larger suite would not qualify for this, unfortunately. So many of us small businesses have very few employees, but huge expenses. I own a retail store that only has one full-time employee, almost 20 in the summer, all part-time, but my rent is almost $10,000 a month. And this is true of almost all beach area stores. Is there anything that is geared to help us survive? So I think part of this program is absolutely that, you know, and I think we realize that, you know, as business has changed, you're definitely down to one full-time, but, you know, 20 in the summer. And I think that's what we want to see is how many employees do you have at the highest point of your season, right? And so that's what you're going to showcase. And then that would put you into that 11 to 30, which would be almost $10,000 that you could apply for. But, you know, just, you know, if you have questions around that or you're not quite sure, give me a call. Let me help you kind of walk you through that application. You know, and I know that this grant can't be everything to everybody. And, you know, it's $2 million. I think the city's spent a long time trying to figure out what is the best way to affect as many businesses as possible, but at the same time, be helpful to where it's really going to help you survive this and hopefully recover. You know, and I know $5,000 to $10,000 is not necessarily what everybody is looking for, but this is a great start. You know, I think for if it could pay for a month of rent, if it could pay for half of a month of rent, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of it. So does a law firm fit into the three categories? So a law firm falls outside of kind of that restaurant, retail, and then that's those services that are, you know, salons and hair salons and day spas, but you still qualify. So I would say you still should apply, you know, and hopefully make it into the lottery, and then we'll see what happens from there. Our physical therapy business is eligible. We were severely impacted by COVID and closed down due to safety. You have, as long as you fit all those other requirements, you are absolutely eligible for this. Okay. So let's see. Please ignore if you're going to discuss this. Oh, sorry. We have a small therapeutic massage practice in Newport. We've been there for years. My husband is a sole proprietor and practitioner. He has no employees. He's a sole proprietor. We qualify for your grant, but not clear if you have to have employees. We're merely asking for help to cover his lease. So you would qualify for this as well. So, okay. I know that this is less priority given to people who have received PPP, but if the PPP was lower than what we needed to run the business, will those companies be given higher priority on the group of folks who received PPP? Example, PPP was low due to payroll, but other rent is so high. So we did not get close enough to money to cover our rent expenses. So there is priority and precedence built around first industries, and then priority given based on how much people received in either idle funding or PPP. So there will be different priorities built around those buckets. Will priority be given to businesses that today are still not allowed to reopen? We own a spa and we're not allowed to reopen while restaurants are already open. So you are on one of those three categories. So as a spa, you would fit into one of those three priority buckets. So yes. If you are a home operated business in the city, does this mean that you do not qualify? So unfortunately, it means that you do not qualify for this particular grant. It is for a commercial or industrial space or zoned business that has a lease. So if applicant chooses to include costs incurred between March 1st and present, will the applicant be eligible to also apply funds to costs incurred subsequent to application submission? So I think if I'm understanding this correctly, you're asking, you know, can you use costs that were incurred prior to you submitted this to fund this? So absolutely. So it's from March 1st on, and I hope I'm answering your question correctly. But any costs that you incurred from March 1st through today, you can use for this. You know, that's the route that you choose to go. So our landlord reduced our rent for 2 months due to COVID. Will this disqualify us or reduce our ranking for getting a grant? No, it will not reduce it. You're still qualified and eligible to apply. If an applying business already received PPP and idle money, will it even be possible for them to be randomly selected during the upcoming lottery? How do you give priority but keep random with a lottery all at once? So again, the way this is going to work is we're going to go through the different industries first. So restaurant, retail, and some of those service-based businesses that you saw, professional services. if they're, we're going to see how many are there, they will go first, and then we'll go down the line of other businesses. So they'll be put into a lottery first and foremost, and then the rest will be put into a different lottery. If, it's all based on how many people apply and what industries they apply from. So, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like just yet. Is this grant completely forgivable? So yeah, it is a grant. There's nothing to pay back. So to clarify, sole use of an executive suite disqualifies one for the grant. So again, it depends, so if you, let's say it's suite A of the entire space, and you have the lease for that entire space, then you would qualify. If you're subletting a small office within a bigger office space, and there's 10 different offices in that suite, then unfortunately you would not qualify. I operate a small design studio and have reduced all my employees to reduced hours. Does this qualify under laying off employee category? It does. A reduction in hours of significance like that would qualify. Do you anticipate more grant programs to further help businesses beyond this grant? So I can't speak to that, but I know that there are a lot of programs coming, from this is really coming from the CARES Act to the county to the city. But I think there are programs coming out all the time. I know that I saw one come out, and it was a FedEx grant that came out yesterday that was for $5,000 to small businesses. I think you're going to start to see grants rolling out from all different parts of, private, public, government. I think you're going to really start to see that. So I would say, keep your eye out, keep your eye open. If you reach out to us, we'll try to notify you as we come across them. I know that there's been a lot of companies that have put out grants. The problem is, as you're probably aware, that with some of these grants, I mean, they could be nationwide, they could be worldwide, and so when they have $10 million, it sounds great, but when you're talking worldwide or countrywide or the entire state of California, that money gets oversubscribed very quickly. Okay. What if we receive EIDL after getting your loan? And so that could be a possibility, but it's really, the test for this is, have you received EIDL already? That's what we're asking, okay? Is there a Newport Beach or SBDC grant program geared specifically towards DVBEs? And so currently there is not, but like I said, that FedEx program that came out through the Department of General Services through the state of California yesterday was actually through their small business enterprise program. So, I think you might see more coming in the future, but currently there is not. Okay. Would an independent contractor be considered an employee for this? So again, if you're an independent contractor, but you have a lease in a commercial space, you would qualify. If you don't, and you're, working from home, so we would have to, definitely give me a call so we can talk about that. So when is the first money expected to be paid out? So as soon as you get us all the documents and requirements, we'll validate that they're all true and correct, and then we'll give it to the city, and the city will write a check. And I think they're eager to write those checks. I can see Tara already has the pen in her hand. She's ready to write them, but yeah, so as soon as you get it, we're not looking to delay this process in any way, but I do realize that some of these documents that we're requesting will take a little bit of time for some people to get. But as soon as you give them to us, we will call you, we'll work with you one-on-one to kind of make sure everything's there. And then we'll submit it to the city that day, hopefully. And then the city will work through, make sure that's all good. And then I know that they want to expedite this as fast as possible. So I think they're pushing us to make sure that we get it out as soon as possible. So yes. So will we have to repay the grant if subsequently getting EIDL? So that's not the way the language is written now. So, I don't know that that's something that the city, we might have more information as we go through this. And, for those that were selected, we might go through that, but I think it's definitely something the city will take back and discuss. So with that, I'm going to stop there. We're going to send this to you. This recording will land in your inbox shortly. If you have any other questions, you can email us. Let me just go back to this informational piece. You can reach out to the city. You can reach out to us directly. We'll try to answer all of your questions the best we can. This opens tomorrow. If you need help filling out the application, you can talk to Manal or myself, or several of us will be here to walk you through it. I think you'll find that it's really straightforward. It's really quick. It's really that initial screening to see where you're at and where you fit. And then from there, we'll see where everything lands, and we'll have a lottery on the 19th. And then hopefully we'll get people checks right after that. So right after and so what you can do to prepare is that documentation that you saw that was needed. Let me just go through this. All these different types of things that we're going to need to provide to the city and really to the CARES Act requirement piece. If you can start getting that ready, we can get that out, sooner rather than later. So as soon as you send it to us, we'll validate it and move forward. So So with that, I'm going to stop there and, thank you guys and best of luck to everybody. Thank you to the city of Newport Beach and thank you to the council member for joining us today and taking time out of their schedule. And I know that they've done a great job of really trying to get money out. They're one of the first cities to really kind of push this money out throughout the county. So anything we can do for you, let us know, but look forward to working with you and best of luck to everybody. So thank you.